Yeah, what's up, you guys? It's Joshua Jokno, and I know it's been a while since we have had our last review. And right now, I'm really excited to bring to you a review that I'm going to do, or I have done over for Gotham by Gaslight. So, uh, just a note: there has been quite a departure from the original literature, from the original comic book adventure. But of course, the primary setting remains the same, which is in 1888 and 1889. Just to give you a little background of what Gotham by Gaslight is, it's actually divided into two separate comic books, both of which have actually very good standalone stories. But what Gotham by Gaslight, this adaptation had done is that it took the primary storyline and fleshed it out quite effectively, to my opinion. So basically, Gotham by Gaslight is a comic book that was done by Brian Augustine and Mike Mignola, and with inks by Craig Russell. This is a very curious piece, and the curiosity here that piqued is one that is really satisfactory and one that is really satisfying. So let's get into the nitty gritty of the whole review, and let's see why I think that this is one of the best animations or animation adaptations by DC so far. So basically, we find Bruce Wayne, Selina Kyle, and James Gordon, the primary movers of our story, in Gotham City that is thrown into 1888. So basically, this is what we would call an elseworld story, wherein the tradition of the comic book writers is that they are given like a freedom to explore different time frames, different settings, which includes, of course, different times across history, as far as their creative juices can take them. So here, we are taken to 1888, wherein the infamous Jack the Ripper had terrorized the streets of Whitechapel. But since this is a Batman storyline, they contextualized it into Gotham City, which is set in America. So we find our key players grappling with these serial killings, and the writers and the animators wastes no time into establishing the world and the darkness wherein these characters are set. Uh, of course, we have to be very careful because I would be saying a lot of spoilers for this animation. So if you're if you're into the whole spoiler train, then by all means we welcome you. But if you're not, then you've got to make a decision if you would want to stay within the bounds of this review. But with no further ado, let's go. So what I really liked about this storyline is, apart from being able to effectively depart from the source material, and apart from being an elseworld story, is that number one, the writers, rather, the story writers, were very bold into exploring something as sensitive as the case by Jack the Ripper. Back in 1888 to 1889, this had been a big case in Whitechapel, New England, and a lot of women died, five to be exact, in the most horrific manner. And the comic book adaptation for it was able to capture it, but with good taste. So basically, you have characters like Bruce Wayne, Selina Kyle, Harvey Dent, James Gordon, and a cameo from Pamela Isley, whom we know in the comic book canon, or DC comic book canon, as Poison Ivy. She had been used to start off. She had really been used to great effectiveness here because she is shown as a dancer for a CD club, for a gentleman's club, and you would think that she'd play a greater role, but here she actually plays a damsel in distress. You'd think that she's an empowered woman here, but all of a sudden she gets, as slasher films are inclined to be to use the trope. It's always the good-looking female who gets to be stabbed first and gets to be killed first. So that's what happened to Pamela Isley. But again, it's not distasteful in any way because they are set into this non-fantastical world wherein there is a real threat, a well-fleshed threat, actually, for that matter, and everything that had happened here had been, not only plot driven but character driven. So it is, if you get to watch it, or if you had watched it, you would agree that being able to kill Pamela Isley early on in the series, as early on in the movie, is reminiscent of a lot of other slasher films such as Psycho, which innovated the genre, and then preceding or succeeding the other horror flicks. It's a very good thing that they explored this trope, and without compromising the outcome or compromising the material. And then we have Bruce Wayne. Of course, Bruce Wayne here is, I didn't see him as this dark figure as he is usually depicted in the other across other DC animations or DC comic books for that matter. But it was actually, to me, it felt like there was a fresh take on him without having to trample too much on his character. There's a darkness there, but the writers of this animation chose the other way by depicting him as someone who's objective, someone who does not necessarily uh, get caught by his own feelings without having him to brood too much. There is a darkness there. There is this intellect there, but they focused more on him being objective, him being an actual detective, which I think is missing from the recent interpretations of Batman, even in the DCEU, which is another messy affair altogether. So I like that about Batman here, about Bruce Wayne. You can easily demarcate him from the other Bruce Waynes, but primarily it's because of the fresh take that they've had for him. And then you have Selena Kyle, who is the epitome or is the very example of a very empowered woman or empowered female figure in this iteration of her. And she's not easily rattled. She's not like her usual interpretation, wherein you'd see her as a crook. Here, she's a complete embodiment of female empowerment. And were there times that she acted as a damsel in distress? Yes, but it's not just because the plot calls for it, but because the story is weaved in such a way that it was all too necessary. And then, of course, we have Harvey Dent, whom I thought to begin with was the actual villain of the story, and I was wrong. Here, he's just a complete jackass from start to finish, complete jackass. There was a change in his character, which would tell you that, hey, maybe this guy is the bad guy, when in fact it's not. Which brings us to our main spoilery of a spoiler for this review. James Gordon, Commissioner James Gordon. Of course, he assumes the ex-military man, the commissioner for Gotham City, and here he's actually kept. He's this objective guy whom is just doing his job, but at the end there's a complete change there. Before we go into the actual spoiler part, let me just tell you that what is really good about the characterization of these characters in the series is that they have undergone a complete change, which is, if you're going to study literature, if you're going to study the writing of literature, that is very important, because for in such a small time of 70 minutes, by Gaslight is only worth 1 hour and 10 minutes. They were able to show the changes within the character, and that's a good thing. Here, James Gordon had undergone a complete change, not because there were some things that were led onto his way, but if you were going to look at the character-driven storyline, his is the most character-driven because, again, spoiler, he is actually Jack the Ripper. So I really like the way that the writers were so bold about it, that they turned this staple non-powered hero into the actual villain. But of course, I have other contentions, and one of my contentions about it is, maybe since there is an absence of the Joker in this storyline, it is highly likely that this is the Joker embodiment that we are looking for in this story. Why? Number one, of course, he's deranged. He has secondly, he's deranged because of an unspoken trauma. And then number three, he has a female consort by the figure of Barbara Gordon, who was actually insane, which you did not know in the first time that you'd see her on screen. But as the story progresses, you'd understand that there's something wrong with her. So I saw them as the archetype or as the representation for Joker and Harley. So and that's a really good thing. That's a really refreshing take on these characters. Since and they didn't want to go that we've got to think of a good Joker here in this storyline. We've got to integrate Harley Quinn here. Uh, we've got to have Pamela Isley here, Poison Ivy here, but they chose a different path by integrating a lot of the storylines from different characters, which I really like. It's something that is not only new, but it is actually intelligent storytelling. Now, another point here that is really good to point out is the role of women in this iteration of Gotham City or of the DC universe helmed by Batman. Is that they took it so naturally that you'd see that the women are struggling to to lift themselves up, not only from poverty, but from the prying eyes of the male population, wherein they are seen as, the total objects of the men's desire, that they are less than men, which is actually the whole statement that's being generated by the original Jack the Ripper, that women are more sinful, they're more susceptible to wrongdoings. And we can see that here, that the whole society is actually against women, very anti-female, which Selina Kyle, in my opinion, was able to transcend. And of course, I've mentioned that there are a lot of changes in this narrative, but were they able to respect the source material? Oh, definitely yes. In the original storyline, it was not Commissioner Gordon who was the Jack the Ripper, but another figure that we have not heard from the Batman universe. And I think the way that this storyline was respects the material is that they were able to embody the characteristics or the archetypes that each of these characters had embodied, or these characters had represented, without having to compromise their creativity. And I think that's what we're looking for if you're going to adapt a well-known material, so to speak. So all in all, do I think that Gotham by Gaslight is a good animation movie? Definitely yes. It deserves recognition amongst the ranks of Batman Year One, The Dark Knight Returns, The Dark Knight Strikes Again, and that's the thing about DC and Warner Brothers, is that if you think that the DCEU sucks, well, definitely they are winning in their animation arm. They're winning in their games. They're winning in their comic books. They've got a lot of wins. It's just that DCEU is more distributable, or it's more well known, because after all, it is a movie. So yeah, so I guess that wraps up my review for Gotham by Gaslight. If you're willing to catch it, by all means do. If you're a Batman fan, if you're someone who's just wanting to watch good animation, then this is something that you might really want to watch over the weekend. So I guess that's it. So for more sensible content, please do follow us on Patreon. From now on, we're really going to be industrious and setting up and posting a lot of content for you guys. So you might want to follow that. So with no further ado, again, this is Joshua Jokno, and see you around next time.